Norfolk Business Show with Danny Snelling. Sponsored by MT Comms.
Hannah.
Hi.
Hannah Springham, isn't it?
Yeah.
Springham, that's right. Yeah, sorry. So I met you at the Gerald's thing originally. I think it was a Gerald's networking event, but it sounded like a great story. And of course, I knew about the restaurant. So perhaps tell our listeners where we might know of you, or farm food?
Farmyard.
Farmyard.
Yeah.
Farmyard. Tell us all about what you're up to now, what perhaps you're most known for, or the business is most known for. And then we'll delve back in time a bit and go from there.
Great. Yes, sounds good. So Farmyard was a restaurant on St Benedict Street, which we opened in January of 2017. And that was kind of Andrew's dream, really. So my husband's a chef, and I'd re-met him in London because we were both from Norfolk originally, weirdly. And his dream was to open a restaurant back in Norfolk when we moved back here at some point. And so he was kind of thinking about it for a long time as to what it would be. And then he came up with this concept of, the word farmyard being about, we're in farmland here. Mm-hmm. So basically celebrating the local produce rather than letting a chef's ego dictate the menu, which happens all the time. Which, means that it really leans into the seasons, basically, of what's around you and the local produce. So that was the concept behind it, which I loved. I think the word farmyard was so clever. And he wanted a pink neon sign above the door, which I also was in full support of. So that was his dream. So I helped him launch that in 2017. And we just closed it in June, just gone. So last June 24, which was sad, but a really important thing to do. And actually it feels like definitely the right thing to have done. Obviously, there were lots of brilliant things about it. It was in the Michelin Guide and had 3 AA rosettes, and we were visited by Jay Rayner, although sadly his review went out literally the day we went into lockdown. Literally, we sat there, we'd been waiting for it, and we went, oh. And we couldn't use any of the publicity, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then in lockdown, we launched this other business sort of by mistake, which is the thing.
So I was under the impression this was all new and since the closure, but
no. So weirdly, we found ourselves in lockdown at home in the middle of nowhere. We live in Reetham, so it's really quite isolated. We weren't in the city, and lots of restaurants are doing kind of takeaways, or once we figured out what everything was and furlough and everything. If you remember, lots of restaurants started doing restaurant takeaways when they found that kind of, not loophole, but they were allowed to do it. But we kind of ran the numbers and didn't quite see how we were going to make it work, because you'd have to sell quite a lot to justify paying staff, because you couldn't have them furloughed and working, obviously. So we did it just for kind of Valentine's Days, things like that, but we decided not to do it on the whole. But then we realised we were quite isolated. I was doing that. You remember, you could drop groceries to vulnerable people. I did a bit of that and noticed lots of people were really isolated. Anyway, meanwhile, we're homeschooling the kids and Andrew's batch cooking, and I was freezing his food, and I noticed it tasted just as good when it was defrosted. I was like, something in this. We were looking around supermarkets for inspiration. Do you remember? It was like the only thing you could do was go to the supermarket. So suddenly, everybody who wouldn't normally be doing the supermarket shopping households wanted to get down the supermarket. Quite funny. But there was nothing in there apart from kind of pizza and curry, and we were a bit uninspired by it. So I thought we should give it a go. And Andrew was a bit reluctant to begin with, because there's this misconception and preconception of frozen foods being bad. But we gave it a go, and we froze some of our range. We started off with kind of like a homely kind of menu of fish pies and stroganoffs and stuff, and it was really delicious. He did a great job, and people started stocking up, like £200 a pop.
Not like McDonald's. Before they closed, I think there were people queued up outside, I think, to go and freeze McDonald's and Big Macs.
Hilarious, did they? Yeah. God, that's so funny.
I had Kevin in here, who's got all the McDonald's franchises, and he was telling me, they were queued up outside, and they were selling them on eBay for months after.
eBay, that's disgusting.
Frozen food. Frozen McDonald's, yeah.
Oh my God, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
Sorry, no offense to McDonald's. But anyway, we decided doing this thing, there was something in it. So when we reopened after lockdown, we needed a kitchen because we were going to be using our kitchen again. So we found that Norfolk Showground had a big catering kitchen, which was available because they were going to not do the Norfolk Show the following year. So we took it for a year. We were actually there a year and a half, which was absolutely brilliant. They were so kind to let us have that space. And we got SALSA accreditation, which is quite a high-level food grade, food safety certification that means you can work with larger wholesalers and shops, really. And we bought a frozen van, like a Mercedes Sprinter van, like an Amazon van, and had it converted into a freezer so that we could deliver to, well, nationally, basically. We could then deliver to DPD, who would then become our couriers nationally, and we could deliver to farm shops and delis. So that was kind of game-changing. And that was, you know, the beginning of Farmyard Frozen. And we've been through a few different iterations of what that is, but I think this year is the most exciting year for us because we've just... Actually, we're pulling away from DTC and as that kind of direct to consumer. Right. So at the moment, we deliver to the doorsteps kind of nationwide, and we also are in a few farm shops, delis, and we're having conversations with the bigger supermarkets. But we've been we're holding them off a bit. But we've just started as of tomorrow. We're going to be cooking for first class and business class international airline flights. Wow. In and out of Heathrow and potentially Gatwick soon as well. So that is really game-changing for us. And it's not...
Are the freezers powered by their generators?
Or in the aircraft?
Heathrow.
Probably.
Sorry, in case this goes out like in 3 months' time, then we've just had on the news that Heathrow Airport...
that
blew up or something.
Hopefully not. They're not freezing it, so it's fine. It's just us doing that. Right. Yeah, we're safe, hopefully. Although I saw they were all up in arms. The airlines were all up in arms about it. And then I would sue Heathrow,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me.
I know. So now we're in B2B, so business to business. So it's a really interesting journey and for lots of reasons. But what's dawning on me now is that the word farmyard is less important, which feels like a really interesting sense of relief. It's odd. And I hadn't quite... You know, when you go into business and people would always be saying, are you retail? Are you D2C? Are you B2B? And I'd be like, well, you're just trying to find your way and figure out what's best for the business. But when you're trying to find new customers in a world in retail terms, whether that's delivering to the doorstep or via a shop, you've got a really massive job to do to compete with the big dogs. Yeah. And you've got to spend millions, really, it would seem, on marketing to reach the whole of the nation to understand that the level of your product is better than the one that they're already buying, even though we don't use any preservatives, it's handcrafted by chefs, but you're up against these huge brands who pretend they are doing that,
but they're not,
and they are using e-numbers and they're using really lovely illustrations on their packaging of, you know, farmers or wooden spoons that make you think, it's made in a kitchen. Even the advert of the unknown brand that I shall not name is this chap in his kitchen drinking wine. It's a sketch, though, of course.
I've seen it.
That chap has, you know, one, he's probably not in the kitchen anymore, but two, they'll all be in blue hairnets. That is not the reality. And I get it. All brands have a job to do. I'm not dissing them, but I'm saying it's very hard to compete with them when you don't have millions of pounds for marketing. So you can spend an age trying to do that. But what's really interesting about this B2B thing is there is no ego again of a brand that is working for another business that just wants to get paid at the end of the day. Whereas it was interesting when people started saying, can we use your Farmyard product in our cafe or restaurant? We were kind of going, but you're going to have to name it as the Farmyard chocolate bar. And actually then we become a bit of a pain potentially for them. Whereas we are making bespoke products for that airline. And it's such an interesting way of working because you lock down your prices for 6 months. Therefore, your butcher does the same. They take photos of the product coming in. You take photos of it as it leaves cooked. So you know exactly what they're getting. You know what you're doing for the next year. We've got a year contract. And it's just so much more straightforward. And, you know, you spend so much time promoting a business, don't you? That it's like you want everybody to know about it. And suddenly it's like, none of that matters. What matters is that we do a brilliant job for them and that work continues. So it's a totally different way of us working, but we're quite excited about it.
I can imagine. So you said you were holding off the supermarkets. Is that because you're afraid of not meeting volume or?
No, it's more. So our volume, we're going to have, as of tomorrow, we're cooking 18,000 chicken breasts a month to leave our site. So it's not about volume at all. And that's just one part of the contract. So no, it's not about volume at all, actually. It's more about, there's a lot of horror stories about working with big retailers.
Yeah.
You
Certainly
can...
from the farmers, that they're the ones up and on for years, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you scale up your production for these people and they can drop you quickly. But you also give away a big margin. So you're giving away at least 30%, if not 40, sometimes 50% to that retailer. And it's your product that you're proud of, and yet they can tweak it, get you to change your packaging. They're not happy. That costs a lot of money, that development. If you're a big brand, you can take that. But as a small brand starting out, it can kill you. And we're not the cheapest brand either, and we're not just a jar of jam and it's really straightforward. What we do is bespoke, and it takes a lot of time and money to get it like that. So we had one of the big supermarkets offer us, and we said no, and then they kept buying our products after because they were trying to copy probably. But I did have a conversation again recently with Ocado, and I've said, look, let's talk again at the end of the year, because two things. The big thing, and this is what I'm really trying to do, is just do less and do it really, really well, because we could just do too much this year. And listening to people around who've been in this, not just this exact space, but I mean, people, investors, people that have sold their businesses, people that know further down the line how businesses exit, actually they're like, you could do too much. You're better off parking those two things and let somebody that purchases your business in 5 years' time think about that. Concentrate on this and look after your margins. So that's really the most important thing. That's why really I'm just holding it at bay for the minute. But the other thing is, if we're going to compete with those big dogs, we need to have beautiful packaging with incredible imagery, so that when you walk into a Waitrose or an Ocado, not that you walk into Ocado, you look at the Ocado online, that you go, oh, I'm not going to buy that brand I know because that looks even better and it's only £1 more, then you really get it. But that's investment, and it's also time, and time is money, isn't it? So we're just trying to really focus. We might even drill down further and go, do you know what we're doing? Because we're also supplying into London restaurants now as well. So if we're doing restaurants and airlines, first class and high-end restaurants, we might drill it down to just protein, so the kind of meat, fish element, and we're doing jus, soups, purees, sauces.
Right.
So actually we might even really...
their own,
because the thing is, we were asked last week to look at a kind of protein bar, some pancakes and lasagna, and we could do the lasagna because we've got the right system for that. But when you're looking at this kind of scale, you're going to have to invest in bits of equipment, so you have to can't do it all again. You have to be strategic about it. So it's a really exciting time for us. We've got all these options in front of us, but we're trying to just really be clear about what we're doing and making sure that we can deliver excellence in whatever it is that we decide to do, which feels like the right thing. Yeah.
So when you say B2B, I guess, you could sell to a restaurant, and that restaurant could palm it off as their own.
They will be.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they will be. But they all do that anyway. When you go to any restaurant that isn't a tiny little independent on the corner, they are buying in a lot of product from other people. All the chains do that, but also big groups do that as well. There's a group we're looking after near London that has 5 really beautiful pub restaurants, and I'm talking about places where the rich and famous live, and they're going to be using our products, and 2 of the biggest restaurants in London as well we're talking to. So they are buying in not everything, but
things, I guess, that save them time. I guess
things that save them time. That's how the clever ones work. Soups, purees, jus, those kind of things that they can use as bases means that we can provide those en masse so that their chefs can concentrate on other things. So, and they've struggled to find that quality before. So we, as a manufacturer, we slot in a really interesting space, which is a kind of high-end manufacturing, which there aren't so many of on that side. But again, there are people that will say that that's what they are. And look, the big contract that we've won against a huge company that have been doing this for a long time, but that are pretty pissed off that we've taken it off their hands, of course. But when you look at our products next to theirs, it is very different. It's a different looking and tasting thing, which is why it's perhaps this interesting space we find ourselves in. Because also, I don't think any of this would have happened if we didn't have the restaurant brand to begin with, for people to go, oh, they know what they're doing. But also this weird spot we find ourselves in after lockdown, people aren't going out to restaurants in the same way. The reason we closed ours is because it's just felt unsustainable, particularly in a small city. It's not like we're in London here. We're not in a bubble like they are. And ultimately, if people aren't going out to eat midweek like they were, and when they're coming out on Saturday, they're eating less alcohol, if drinking less alcohol and eating less, they're having maybe 2 courses or even one, all of that hits your bottom line and makes it hard to be sustainable. And ultimately what that means is if you are employing people to produce everything from scratch and then just wait and see who you get, that's a disaster. Now, if you can bring down your staff labour by buying in some product that's already made and you can hold, instantly you're going to save on all of those bills. So we didn't do that on purpose, but it turns out people are needing our services more than more. And there's one big group, which I can't mention by name, but they are launching a new restaurant which they wanted to go into fine dining for, but they stopped before they opened it because their chefs weren't able to provide that level.
They were going to open.
They were going to kind of re-version one of their restaurants as more of a fine dining outlet, but they stopped just before they went live because actually they couldn't keep up with that level of cooking. So if they can use ours and it's just literally heat and serve, then it's a bit of a no-brainer for them.
Is it? Is it possible that a restaurant could today, open up shop, fine dining, and buy your product, sell it as their own? Obviously, they'd still need chefs preparing it, presumably. Is there anything to stop them? Literally, you could supply everything to them.
No, not at all. I mean, a lot of them. There are restaurants that do that. Fine dining is an interesting word. I mean, what would you call? I can't mention them by name but there are restaurants in Norwich that would sell themselves at that, but they're a chain, and they're buying things in.
To be honest, I'd rule out any chain, personally speaking. But
they sell themselves not to be, but they are. But also, everybody in the market really buys in stock. Some restaurants will still make stock, but actually even Michelin-starred restaurants will buy in stock because it's such a labour-intensive thing to do. So, we're just there kind of making that job easier. But sometimes we'll sell them the beef welly at like the bullet inside, and then they will wrap their own pastry on.
You talk about lockdown. I remember going out in lockdown to go and get a beef Wellington for a friend of mine who had a restaurant.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess where does it start and when does it end? Because you're buying in your produce, aren't you? You're buying in your fresh ingredients. You didn't make them yourselves, did you? So it's fair to say that whatever restaurant you are, you're still buying in something that's been prepared by somebody else, regardless of what it is. So.
Yeah, and I think we can all sit here and say, "Oh, I make everything from scratch, aren't I great?" But in this climate, it's not always the cleverest thing to do. We sent one of our chefs to go and work for a 2 Michelin-star restaurant in London that Andrew used to work for. He used to work for this chef, and she was really surprised that they're buying in bakery items like bread. But it's because why would they compete when they can get their hands on the best bread made? And actually, horses for courses, right? You can't be a restaurant and be absolutely excellent, absolutely everything, and pay your bills and have a huge team that does everything. Isn't it better that you get your artisan bread from, I think, Richard Bainbridge at Benedict's, I'm pretty sure, gets his sourdough from Bread Source because he knows that Steve makes the best sourdough. Yep. So, there's kind of nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
Celebrating
another. No different to getting your alcohol from someone else. So,
exactly.
They're not making the wine, are they? So it's interesting, but that's just given me a bit of a business idea. Perhaps I should open a new restaurant in Norwich and just.
Well, do you know what's funny you say that? Because when we did this at Farmyard, we found ourselves having a facility where 6 of our best sellers in the restaurant literally transferred over. We just noticed that online people were buying the same things. People are kind of creatures of habit. They all loved the beef welly, the Farmyard chocolate bar, crispy potato terrine, goat's cheese and olive bonbons, blah, blah, blah. It was a handful of things that were doing really well across. So we went, hang on, chefs, would you rather make your goat's cheese and olive bonbons by hand in the restaurant in a tiny tray, or should we let Farmyard Frozen do that in a bigger tray and then you can concentrate on your special? Yes, please, we'll do that. We did that with about a third of the menu, and actually we saved a lot of money in staff labour.
It didn't taste any different of it.
And it tasted better because you got consistency. There were no errors.
Is there any truth in, obviously you said it earlier, but when you get something out of the freezer, it somehow tastes better. Is there some chemical thing that makes it taste better, or is it just because it's fermented for a while? Or
well, it depends what the product is. I mean, we've done a lot of development because some things just don't work frozen. So like the beef welly took a long time because you can't put cabbage next to the pastry or it goes wet and it cracks. So Andrew developed a beef welly just for that. So you can cook our beef welly from frozen, which is amazing, and it tastes brilliant. And the crispy items that we do, all the kind of canapé stuff, is, I'd say, better from frozen. We tested it with, we did a massive kind of, we cooked everything twice, some from fresh, some from frozen, and we got everybody to vote on what they preferred, and most preferred the frozen product. It depends. I mean, essentially, it depends what the item is. It's not always the case. We've also come up with loads of brilliant ideas that failed, like, actually freezing rice and risotto. It's always a bit mushy. We don't do anything ricey in our range because Andrew's not proud of it. So you've got to really love it to put it on the menu. But no, I agree with you. Some things are better.
They definitely do. Leftovers, especially if they've already been cooked. I mean,
they can be really good, can't they? And I think that's the thing. Frozen food doesn't have to have preservatives in it if it's made in the right way with the right chefs who are seasoning at the right time. You don't. And it's the same with fresh food. Preservatives are in fresh and frozen, but there's that kind of misconception because of the old style frozen product that was just served, full of E numbers. Yeah. It doesn't have to be that anymore, and actually quite a lot of the time it's not. So
are some of your products cooked or just
everything is pretty much cooked and you reheat, but the beef welly is raw. It's raw meat because you would cook that to how you want it. But yeah, everything is basically cooked perfectly and then you reheat it. So when we do our turkey ballantine at Christmas, it's been slow cooked for a very long time to a really beautiful kind of soft tenderness, so that all you do is reheat it and it's perfect to serve. So yeah, it's been cooked at a restaurant level basically. Yeah.
So presumably the instructions take some time to
it's not a meal kit. It literally is exactly like you'd see it in any supermarket. It just says put it in the oven 200 degrees 20 minutes or air fry it. Yeah. And it's really easy. It's just, there's no faff with our stuff. So it's,
I would have imagined it was like, if you put it in the microwave, do this. If you put it in the oven, do this. Air fry, But I'm thinking more about, you must work out exactly how long it needs for some devices are different as well, different temperatures and stuff like that.
I mean, you have all this trading standards waffle, which basically means you have to say, depending on your oven. So, we say on a standard oven, it's that kind of jargon you always read on the back. Yeah. But there's only one thing that the peas can go in a microwave, but everything else is oven, really. Yeah.
Competitors, I mean, you mentioned one that you were competing against for the airlines, but I think there's a frozen, I don't even know what it's called, but there's one up Sweetbriar, isn't there? A frozen food shop. Is that sort of similar? Would you say that's competitor, or is that more?
So that's the Cook brand. So that's right, Cook they would say about themselves that they're home cooking that you could have done yourself, but they've done it for you. Whereas we say we're a restaurant. Yes. We're restaurant products. So it's what a chef has done for you. So it's kind of having a chef on tap in your freezer for 12 months. Whereas with them, it's home cooking in your freezer for 12 months. So it is an important difference when you try the products side by side, because they just are a different kettle of fish. If you try their welly next to ours, it's just a different experience. We're a bit more expensive and we handle the product in a different way. We don't cook en masse and we don't cook using any machinery really. It's by hand, exactly the same techniques we used in the restaurant. So you get a different experience. But what we try and do is not replicate what Cook are doing anyway, or any of those brands. We try and make sure that what is in our range are things that you'd never normally see in a freezer. So we do like a twice baked cheese souffle, for instance, and just products that you would be surprised to see in a freezer roll. So we won the Innovation Award in 2023, which is with the British Frozen Food Federation. You can't put yourself in for that one. And the guy that runs the awards came up after and he was like, we were up against, Waitrose, Aldi, Lidl, Asda, M&S, all of the big ones. We didn't expect to win it. We didn't even know the award existed. It was the first time we've gone to this thing. But he said, we've given you this award because, well, firstly, it was blind tasting with the Craft Guild of Chefs. But he said, the Innovation Award, so we won the best dessert from that. And then we won the Innovation Award because he was like, this shows that you are doing something, you're in this industry that nobody else is. Like we're really kind of pushing where you can take frozen food, basically.
I'm just intrigued to see where it can go. I mean, obviously, you're doing so well anyway, but it's just, I would think it would be B2C, selling it to consumers, I don't know, via some online ordering system, like just, what's the bloody, the recipe things.
Like a delivery or...
No, the...
Mindful Chef.
No, the where you cook it yourself. I can't even think what they're called, but you buy the whole ingredients.
That is, Mindful Chef does that.
Yeah.
There's a few of them, meal kits.
Yeah, it's like that, but it's not the word I'm looking for. I can't remember the name of the company, but we've tried it a few times.
Yeah.
Clearly very memorable. But yeah, I just imagine that almost replacing those, because you still get to select your dishes, but you don't have to sit there and cook it. But
yeah, I mean, there's definitely an element of that, that you might have those kits midweek and then you have the weekend off and you eat Farmyard.
Yeah.
But it's just...
Or even for special occasions, or, you're having friends over, you buy those instead.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it's just there's so much outlay into competing with those big brands. It's millions. I mean, really, it just takes a lot of money to drive into the acquiring new customers side of it. And it's not to say we won't do that at some point, but just concentrating on the B2B side is a really clever push for us, I think.
Yeah, no, I get it, because you win one contract, it's lots of dishes, whereas you win one customer, it's not quite. No, I get it. So I want to just sort of go back in time again. Where did Andrew and yourself, what's the background? How did you get into this game? And I know you've, you tell me, because I don't. I'm going to guess at it, but the I want to say acting, but it's not acting, is it? It's
directing.
Directing. Yeah. So just, I don't know, start from scratch. Where did you came from here originally?
Yeah. Andrew and I both brought up in Norfolk. I was in South Walsham and he was in Reetham. And our paths kind of overlapped with the same group of friends at school, but we didn't really know each other. And then we re-met in London. I was directing lots of TV shows, and he was a head chef in a restaurant in Soho. And he just said, "This is my dream. I really want to do this." And I'd run a couple of businesses at that point. One was with Peter Jones from Dragon's Den, and one was, which was about kind of TV product placement. And then I'd set up a production company as a founding producer with my friend Jonathan after we did a program called Pineapple Dance Studios about 15 years ago. We set up Knickerbocker Glory, which is an award-winning production company that's still going. So I knew a bit about business, and I was like, you just got to keep talking to people and finding connections, and you'll figure out what the idea is and figure out what that is. And then we moved back here in 2015 because my mum was poorly. She was going to go into a care home, we thought, because she had dementia. She didn't actually, which is good. So we moved back in 15, and because I was at this point about to have our second baby in London, we were going to pay for our mortgage or our rent at that point. So we were like, why don't we move back, get a house in Norfolk, and he could look at starting his business. So I worked remotely actually from 2015 from my boss in London, and just went back and forth a bit. And we set up Farmyard a couple of years after that. I kind of support Andrew from kind of the business side, I suppose. I'm a bit of a firefighter, deal with kind of issues, all the unglamorous stuff backstage, if you like, which is a bit like, I suppose, what you do as a director or an exec producer in telly. He's the talent, and I push him on and create ideas for him and stories.
Yeah.
So it's a similar sort of thing. I loved hospitality. When I was 14, 15, 16, 17, I worked at South Walsham Hall, which was like a country club, and I was a waitress, and I absolutely loved it there. And then I worked in a nightclub here called Time when I was like 17, 18. Remember that? Yeah. So I was the VIP hostess there on the door upstairs. And I loved that job. So I love hospitality. I really love that world. But sadly, because I guess I wasn't able to, I can't be on the floor because we've got two young kids. So it was really his baby, and that's brilliant. And it was lovely to see him do that. But yeah, I've always been I have a separate career, which is telly, and I still do that. I dip in and out depending on how busy the business is. So at the moment I do kind of 2.5 days a week for... Yeah.
Interesting you mentioned Time. I don't think I've published the episode yet, so you wouldn't have seen it, but we were talking about that just last week with Colin Lang. I don't know if you know that name.
I don't know.
But he was trying to get... he actually started an under-18s night at Time.
I remember it well.
Yeah, and he was in the police, and it was his job to get younger under 18s into clubs safely. So he was part of running that, and he actually won an MBE for that.
Oh, that's brilliant. It was an amazing thing.
Yeah, but I'm going to put that episode out soon, so do have a listen to that, because he's an interesting guy. But yeah, funny that came up twice in the last one.
Yeah, it was a great club. It was a great atmosphere.
Yeah. So you'd moved up here, you'd settled presumably with kids and everything, and then went for it with Farmyard, I guess.
Yeah, we did. And it's been a ride because it's not been a stable environment. Obviously, economically, it's been a bloody disaster, one after the other, from kind of anxiety of people and how they felt about Brexit before that was happening. We saw people kind of nervous about going out, weirdly, even that early on. And then obviously the pandemic and the global economic crisis. It has been disaster after disaster. It's very hard to keep going. You're constantly reinventing yourself. People go, oh God, you guys work so hard. You're like, yeah, when's it going to work? Because you feel like you're constantly
seems like
changing.
There's always a challenge, doesn't it? It's interesting because, I mentioned property before we pressed record, didn't we? But, I was the same. Brexit, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Just got over that, and then pandemic. But, everyone seems to suffer from these periods, doesn't matter what industry you're in.
Yeah, I think
there's always challenges.
Yeah.
So I always ask, what's the low points, I suppose? What's the biggest standout thing? I'm sure it's the pandemic. I don't know. There might have been more, but is there anything that stands out as being the greatest challenge or problem faced?
I think my lovely investor always says emotion costs money, and it's really hard not getting emotional in business because I think you're probably, and there are loads of psychopaths in business, and that's probably a real benefit. It's why you're going to make loads of money and you'll be just fine and you'll sleep well. But I think if you're not, and you're a business and you care about your team and your customers and just doing the right thing, then it's pretty heartbreaking when you have to let people go. When we closed our restaurant, we let people go. I get emotional even thinking about it now. It's awful, And some people understand, people in business understand that pain, but people not in business don't. And, there's a lot of guilt that comes with those things. And I think, that it was a real low point when that happened for us. Having to shut down a business was really, really sad and awful, even though it was the right thing to do and we don't regret it one bit. It's a really, really hard thing to do. And I think, I can understand and empathise with business owners that have hit rock bottom kind of in terms of their mental health when that happens. If we were okay, we've got each other. Thank God we're in business together. Because I think if you're on your own in business and you go through something like that, it's really, really hard. So I think that's the hardest thing for me is like trying not to be emotional when you're making business decisions. I can be really tough. I can do what I need to do to save money. But it doesn't mean that I don't care, because you have to make decisions for the business, because there's no jobs for anybody if you don't, ever. Yeah. But it's
interesting
hard.
though you saying that, because I'm thinking of most people I know in business, and we know each other through networking and even socialising together, but don't actually hear anyone from the hospitality. You don't meet people from that, so maybe they just don't get out and network with other
They're always working.
There needs to be a networking group for hospitality, because when you were basically describing how it's such a lonely place being a business owner. It is, but most business owners I know socialise with business owners, and we go out together and we network together. And
there is a bit of that. I mean, hospitality chefs, for instance, and waitresses and managers do socialise. They have they all get drunk after work, but for I would say lockdown was really good for that kind of horror, was sharing with other business. We became closer to other restaurateurs locally through that, because we were all holding on to each other and helping each other out. That was definitely a good thing. But genuinely, the thing about hospitality is the hours are a real killer, because you don't have a life. Then the last thing you want to do is meet up with someone else on a Monday and talk about each other's worries, because you have such little time for your family. I mean,
I know the landlords, they've got the Landlords Association, they get together. Just trying to think. I mean, Norwich Lanes, I suppose that's another.
Yeah, there are little hubs, and there are people that have tried to set things up, but it's really hard, because I think if you're at the coalface and your business is hard, people don't really want to go and probably talk to other people about that. I imagine it's hard.
I don't know. I think it's what needs to happen, because certainly, thinking back to lockdown, there were regularly 60, 80 of us other business owners all getting together on Zoom once a week, and we were having a great time. so great time. That's wrong choice of words, but we had each other for that support. Whereas I don't think of hospitality as ever being in that crowd, if you like. So
no,
it's interesting.
Yeah, it's not so much. I do think we managed to kind of gather the troops more through lockdown, and you do kind of get it. But when you're working from 8 a.m. until midnight, 6 days a week, there's not much time for networking. It's deadly. I mean, it's a real problem, that industry. That's the one thing I would say is we put all of our chefs on a 4-day week during lockdown to come back to, because Andrew had spent the first ever year at home, not just a year, but like Christmas. He's always working Christmas, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, school holidays, weekends, every Saturday night for his whole life. So he just said, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to lose my life. And everybody felt like that's so hard to get chefs back because they wanted a life. There's a lot of bullying and a lot of, aggression in kitchens. But you've got to wonder if that's their fault or our fault as employers, because you promise them the earth when you employ them, and then you go, sorry, can't afford another chef. You're going to have to work that shift. Or sorry, that one's gone off sick. You've got to now pull their shift. It's a really difficult environment. Coming from TV and seeing hospitality, it's not fair what they're put through, and then you expect them to come in all happy and be respectful to their colleagues. It's those, since closing the restaurant, every Sunday Andrew wakes up and goes, oh my God, I've got another weekend day. It's like, it's game changing having that.
I don't know how much time you've had in the kitchen, but is it really like what they, the bear and the other
we can't watch The Bear. We get PTSD watching it. We started it and we're like, oh my God, Johnny, it's so awful.
I watched the movie the other day, which is very similar with I can't remember.
Is it The Chef? It's called Chef. Or
something.
Yeah, exactly. We can't watch it. We must watch them, but it's still too raw because it's so hard, honestly, because it's really high pressured for these people, and there's a lot of also, which is brilliant. There is a lot of spectrum stuff going on, like a lot of kind of neurodiversity in kitchens. There's quite a lot of autism and ADHD, and that's why they're brilliantly creative. Why they're very good at concentrating on detail and doing those hours. They've got all this energy. But that comes with not always great communication skills. So that's why there's a lot of flare-ups. I'm convinced of that too. There's a lot going on in a kitchen that makes it succeed, but it can also be really problematic when it comes to communication and things flare up. And also, there's a lot of ego. And the problem with that is you're dealing with allergens, food allergens. Very important that you can say to your head chef, I think that's the wrong allergen on that plate without being fought down. So for me, it's like, it was a really difficult and fascinating industry to really wrap your arms around and make feel safe. I mean, it took a long time. The best thing about at the end of having restaurants with the women in kitchens, I think was absolutely vital and brilliant, because they were really good at intuitively listening to the chefs and putting their ego aside. Much more, you get all these young gun chefs coming in thinking they know it all. It's like, just listen for a minute to these chefs around you that, we have some amazing chefs from Greece, for instance, who are absolutely fucking brilliant and talented, knew a whole lot more, and they just should listen. And it's quite hard sometimes to get that through to these, there is a lot of ego in the kitchen, that's sure.
I can't imagine it's like that in Norwich, sleepy Norwich. I can see that in London, but But I do love some of those TV programs. Interesting to hear that it is very similar. So we touched on bad points, highlights, rosettes maybe, or.
For Andrew, definitely, it was fabulous for him to receive those accolades. But do you know what was really lovely? Since we closed the restaurant, which was really sad for him, we'll go to an event and be talking or sampling Farmyard stuff, and they'll spot Andrew or spot us and come up, and customers will be like, oh, we miss you, you're our favourite restaurant, we love the open pass, we could watch the chefs, and they tell us about their stories of being in that restaurant. And I love stories, but as a waitress, that's what I remember, was just, you're giving people an experience. The word hospitality is about being hospitable and taking care of people. Being in a restaurant isn't about eating food. It's much more than that. It's where you go to spend your money that you are doing 9 to 5 to go and be with people you love and break bread. And that, and to have been there for people, we would see engagements, breakups, birthdays, marriages. Honestly, from that past, it was like watching telly sometimes for those chefs, if they weren't so busy. And so those were the moments where you realise you've impacted someone's life. And you know, for Andrew particularly, like hearing that, whenever I hear that, I feed it back to him, because it's, you know, it's really easy to go, oh my God, I did 7 years of the restaurant and I didn't make any money from that. That's a failure. But I think what we've learned is it's not a failure, because all of the mistakes we've made, we've taken with us and built upon.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you know, which I'm sure everybody says to you, mistakes are really valuable. But also, we created those experiences. Yes, he got his accolades, he got written about, Jay Rayner visited him, but also we made people's weekends for years. And that's really what it should be about. So, yeah, it's like small wins sometimes. It's not always an obvious big one. Although at the moment, a high feels like finding something that feels sustainable. In this climate, for me, it's about being able to sleep at night. I don't sleep if there's, you know, any inkling of problem, and there's lots of problems in business, but I've slept much better in the last few months. Yeah.
So one other thing, you've won at the Gerald's. Tell me more about that, the Gerald's connection and the support they've given you.
So they very kindly invested some money in us last year through their growth fund.
I don't think it's simple. Like I use the word "won" because it was not a competition, but you know they chose your ideas and your venture, I guess, to support. So
I guess it was kind of a competition. The first year they did it, and they're doing the second round now, but they put it out and they said, we've got £100,000. They didn't specify how they were going to split that up. And so we got a chunk of it, but I went and said, I want this much, please, and gave them a good pitch and told them what we were going to do with it. And they invested, which was brilliant. And we're now quite heavily involved with them. They're one of our lead investors now. And actually, it's been brilliant, because it's not just about having some money for what you need to do, is it? But it's about having their knowledge as well. For us, it's really great. And actually, although a year and a half ago or a year ago when we started that conversation, we thought it was going to be about retail, because they're obviously, it's amazing to have retailers like investing in your small retail business. But also we're now learning with them, because we're now moving into that B2B side, which isn't, you know, cooking for airlines isn't something that they've done before, but it's a really interesting journey. We can lean on their expertise around the business, you know, in terms of what we're going to invest our money in and how that goes. And
am I right in saying it might be just this time round, but they're offering marketing as well and support in training? I don't know.
I don't know, actually. They might be.
I think I heard wind of that. That's what's offered this time round.
Oh, great.
But, I don't know. If,
they've bought a marketing company, Yawn. So it might well be that as well. Yeah. So it's great.
Tap them up for a bit of that as well.
Well, I don't need it now.
Well, no, I suppose not. No.
I mean, not in the traditional sense. I will need, funnily enough, our agents that we work with, the airline, sent me this morning an article from the industry magazine I didn't know about. I was like, I'm going to do marketing. I'm like,
it's an airline magazine.
Yeah, it's like in-flight something or other, hospitality. I was like, so probably in a year or two from now, I'll be like, oh yeah, now we're having to pay for an article in that magazine, apply for that award. So but at the moment, it's kind of coming from word of mouth, and you know, because obviously the airline agents look after a number of airlines, and so it kind of spirals.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Yeah. I'm sure it will. Is there any other industries or sectors you can think to target next?
I mean, what's interesting is there are lots, right? So we could look at care homes and schools and, you know, all that stuff. But we're trying to just hold our niche a bit, which might just be first class, business class airline and high-end restaurants, not just London, but as an example. Somebody asked me this, like I've been asked twice in the last week. And, you know, it's not that we won't do it, but it might not work for them if the price, because we're never going to be the cheapest. And a lot of schools and care homes might not be able to afford the product we're doing. And it's not that we're snobbish, because we would, you know, this lasagna thing that we might do.
You've got to differentiate from the rest, haven't you? You've got to. And if it's on price, then your clients are going to be people who don't even look at the price. You know, let's be honest, they're going to be wanting something special, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the airline, I mean, the way this all works is they literally will give us the price and go, this is what it needs to hit. Sometimes that's what happens. And so we're like, okay, we've got to make that work. How do we make that work? And you do it or you don't do it. But yeah, sometimes there are loads of manufacturers out there who cater to the mass market, I suppose. And we're not, you know, absolutely mammoth factory with machinery. So we can never compete with them on their cheaply made ready meal that's £1 or £2 or whatever it is. Well, that won't ever happen. But we don't want to do that, and we don't do that. We don't want to jam preservatives in there. That's not us. So we will. In the moment, we're not being picky, but also we need to not take on too much, because then the wheels can fall off.
Oh yeah.
So once we've got this, and this, that's us for the year.
But equally, it's nice to diversify as well, so you don't put all your eggs, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's definitely
out,
true, that we shouldn't ever have just one client. That is really important, yeah.
Or even one niche, because if heaven forbid airlines,
well, I know,
close the doors, just anything like that. You know.
Yeah, I was actually saying that to, literally, I sat with our investor this week going, there's another pandemic. I'm a bit nervous about airlines, but I think if we can be in restaurants and airlines, that's better. Especially as someone
care homes, I think would be a good one, because there are some really high end care homes, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
There is one in Norwich, isn't there? I've got a connection into, so it might be worth a
that could be good. Yeah, one of the agents that looks after us in Sheffield for this big restaurant chain, it's kind of like a holiday park restaurant chain. They also look after care homes, so I think we're on their radar as well, which could be good.
Yeah. So I guess, there's not one place or person or business that you'd like a connection into if our listeners had them, or...
I mean, you never know, do you? But, I mean, if anybody's listening and they think they've got a connection I might want to know about, that'd be great. I guess definitely business to business connections. So like you're saying, care homes or a particular group of schools or some kind of area that thinks they might need that kind of business catering basically would be useful. Definitely. Okay. Yeah.
Well, you heard it here, folks, if any of you can connect them. So I've got to ask, what do you enjoy most about this? Not necessarily just what you're doing now, but what have you enjoyed most out of everything you've done, and Andrew as well? What do you think brings you most pleasure from doing all this?
For me, it's creativity. I'd say things that have
must be
any
for
side
him
of
as
it.
well, I guess.
Yeah,
but equally
I think it is. Yeah, we're similar, but also completely different. So for me, for him, it's an obvious thing to say because he's the chef, right? But for me, because I have the role behind the scenes, I'm doing all the time. There's not always a creative outlet for me here. And there was more when we're promoting the brand Farmyard, and I can really think creatively about that. For now, it won't be so much, but so the TV stuff that I do gives me that kind of creative input, I suppose, as well. But really, it's just being able to work together is really good. We're really grateful to be able to work together.
Presumably you've got the work-life balance going on.
I mean,
not very well at the moment.
Do businesses ever have the work-life balance? I don't know. I'm yet to meet a business owner, unless they've retired and they've nailed it. It's really hard getting that right, but we are trying. It's definitely better since Andrew's not doing the weekends. That's game-changing, so that we can see the kids a bit more. But we haven't got it completely nailed. But I mean, we're still scrabbling away in the hope that will come. It's very, very hard running businesses, isn't it? I mean, hard to get that right.
Is there an end game? Is there, thoughts at least of it will be saleable one day and you can swan off into the distance? Or,
definitely. Yeah. I don't think we'll ever stop. I think, like you can sell businesses and then get itchy feet and want to do something. I think if you're the kind of person to be running businesses and liking to be busy, I think the idea of just fully stopping is never going to happen. Yeah. But we'd like to exit in a few years from now, 3, 5, 7 years, who knows? That would be really great. And I'd like to build a house by the Norfolk Broads.
Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah. See me going past on my boat. So I always ask, where would you like it to be in 3 to 5 years? What does that look like for you? Is it big factory of chefs making loads and loads of portions, or is it, what does it look like for you? What do you think it will?
I mean, probably not too dissimilar from where we are. We've got a really big unit, so I'd like to see that we're using kind of about half of it. I'd like to see it all fully fitted out and 15 chefs in there constantly churning would be just fantastic. To know that we could be consistently making brilliant products to make other businesses successful would be a great feeling. And there's one up ahead, which I'm really sorry we have to sign all these NDAs, but there's a chef like a Michelin star chef who wants us to make food for his new restaurant from October onwards in London, and that will be game changing as well, because the products will end up with, he might decide to take into retail as well with his face on it. That could be brilliant, but also for kind of first class airlines, that product. So, it would just be great up ahead to see that we've sustained the business and it's making money, and that, just that, to be honest, it's just to feel like it's sustainable success in this climate feels like would be a groundbreaking thing to just know that.
Have you got your own storage and logistics sorted, or is that all outsourced, or is that
storage?
Well, just frozen storage, presumably.
So we have a massive freezer, a huge freezer trailer basically, but we ship out each week. So we're taking like 5 to 8 pallets down to Heathrow each week. So we're kind of moving it through pretty quickly. But at the moment we are storing. I mean, when you grow, there are other options to store elsewhere. You can do that too.
I know of a company locally who can do all that. And dispatch and keep it
is that
frozen.
V Depot?
Yeah.
I was speaking of them. I mean, exactly. They're a good option. Obviously, you pay for it, but there are options as you grow.
Yeah, and I know they take a lot of the ordering process off you as well, which is nice, but it might be a conversation. It sounds like you've already found them. So anything else you want to shout about? Anything else coming up? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, probably gone through most of it.
I think we've touched on lots of them. Technology. I always like to ask about technology because we're a tech company, but is there anything that's really helped you? I don't know if it's the systems and processes. Have you got all that into software yet?
We're just about to do this. So there is that is something we need actually, is to find this. I think it's not NPD, but something. It's definitely not that. But there's a system where you can literally plug in your stock in and out, and it will kind of give you your stock take and prices fluctuating. So Andrew's on it. We're trying to find one of those companies at the moment, because
V Depot do all that as well. So I sound like I'm plugging them a lot, don't I? But they do help with all that as well.
So I think that will be really useful. In terms of kind of tech for us, it's not a particular push. I mean, in the TV world, we're all using AI and ChatGPT to create, documents and ideas and idea generating. It's really good. I had a really interesting chat at the UEA through Brandland. They've got brilliant kind of department. They're looking at, with the students looking at branding, and they were talking a lot about the future of AI and how that's going to take lots of jobs in that kind of design world, and how you move with it, because it'll be good in, it's not going to mean that nobody will have any jobs, but it will mean there'll be different jobs to kind of support around that. So, and
AI is not going to change the way we want to taste and enjoy food, is it? So it's a very safe industry, I would imagine.
Hopefully.
I can't imagine. Can't think how to come out in a little pill where you just take a pill and that's it. It's like you've had a 3-course Michelin star meal.
So this is the funny thing. This is a good thing to end on, maybe. I had this mad realization with a chef that we've just re-employed actually from one of our restaurants. We were having this chat with her, and that's right, it came from. So I was in London a couple of weeks ago having lunch with my telly boss. And she was saying how all her male friends are using Ozempic at the moment. And
what's that? Sorry.
The weight loss drug that everybody's talking about. The kind of a diabetes drug that is taking the world by storm. In London, everybody's using it.
Really?
So this friend of mine was telling me that all her male friends were using it. I was explaining that to this chef, and she said, oh, well, my friend in New York who runs a restaurant is launching Ozempic menus. This is the next problem for the hospitality industry. People are eating much less, so they're on this Ozempic drug and they're not eating 3 courses. So Andrew was saying, well, apparently in the 80s there were cocaine menus. People were coming. That's where fine dining probably came from. Is that kind of small courses? Everybody's on drugs. But now, if people are not eating so much as well, it's like, never mind the global pandemic and the economic crisis. Now people genuinely can't even eat any food. So God knows. It will be a pill.
Perhaps it's just going to be more, fine dining is going to be more popular because they don't want the bigger portions. But,
maybe.
That's interesting.
It's the next problem.
I think last Friday night, I ended up in a McDonald's after a night out, and my friend was not hungry. And I found out he was on it.
There you go.
It's a male as well,
See?
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
Right, I think we'll wrap up there, but that was fascinating, very fascinating, and I wish you all the best for the future. I'm sure you don't need it because
probably do, but thanks.
that's going places, and yeah, good luck to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having me.
The Norfolk Business Show.